Hi JD, and thanks for joining us on this little video chat. I'm really impressed with the presentation you gave today here around the 10 workplace learning initiatives or things that we need to be across. And I know there's 10 of them, but can you just highlight maybe a handful of those that you think we need to be across, and what can L&D practitioners do going forward?
Sure. So out of the 10 principles that I discussed in my presentation, I'd say the kind of 3 to highlight would be, number 1 at highest priority was modern workplace learning is aligned to really solve real-world measurable business challenges. Because ultimately, if we can't answer the question, what problems are we trying to solve as learning and development, and then how do we know what we're doing is actually working and making a difference for the business, then I don't really see the point in doing what we're doing. So I think more and more as our value is potentially questioned or potentially challenged by other opportunities, and the enabled employee that's able to go out and find their own resources and drive their own performance, we have to really make sure we have ways to tie learning and knowledge to performance and behaviors, and ultimately to measurable business outcomes that really drive our value home and reinforce us as part of the business. So I'd say that's 1. 2, I would say kind of the principle that states that modern workplace learning is familiar. So for me, that relates to enabling familiar experiences that people have every day, and how do we bring those familiar behaviors that are already established and related to learning and problem solving into the workplace. Because I think too often employees are forced to relearn how to learn, either when they join an organization or sometimes multiple times within an organization, based on what we're doing at that particular moment or what strategy we're deploying. So how do we pay attention to both technology and other things people are doing in the real world, and leverage not necessarily those tools per se, but related behaviors, and understand the influence that these types of technologies are having on how people consume and share information. So the classic example I use is Snapchat. You don't have to use Snapchat. There is no Snapchat for Learning initiative per se, but what does the largest growing social network tell us about how people consume and share information every day? So that's 2. And the one other one I would highlight is modern workplace learning is personal. And I think to date, we often define personal in terms kind of 2 different ways as learning. 1, it's providing content that people can go find on their own and make personal because they've gone out and found that information and are engaged in that course on their own. And then there's the kind of common ability to target people based on role or hierarchy or manager. So those ways that we can make content more relevant and more timely. I think we would need to go a step beyond that, and technology is now allowing us to go beyond that and leverage machine learning and algorithms and adaptive technologies, so that we make sure the right content is getting to the right person at the right time in a very personal and individual way. That again just furthers the value that we can drive into the organization and further enable and motivate people to learn, because if you know this is for you and based on your knowledge and performance gaps, you're, in my opinion, more likely to engage, as opposed to, well, everyone in your team got this, therefore is it actually useful for me because I'm in a different place than the person next to me.
Great. Thanks, that's great. You talked there about the technologies, and one of the technologies you identified was Snapchat. What others come to mind from a technology perspective that L&D probably needs to be aware of and maybe keep their eye on in relation to going forward with learning and development?
Sure. So I think a lot of people are on the VR, AR, and mixed reality trains right now. I personally, while I think there's great promise potentially in those types of technologies, I'm very interested in where text messaging and SMS and that type of delivery model goes. And just in myself, I've noticed that my behaviors and my reliance on iMessage and text message based technology is growing over time. And I think as we get into the world of chatbots and the continued ability for us to interact with technology via chat, or being fed content and sending content and feeding content via text messaging type format, I think there is a huge opportunity there. And now that we're seeing Apple opening iMessage to developers and the ability to enhance, it's not just about text and simple photo and video, now it's about the ability to embed applications and different types of content in a format that everyone has. And even if you don't have a smartphone, most people who have even simpler phones have access to text capabilities. So how does that inform our ability to, again, leverage familiar behaviors and deliver content or enable performance support in an application that people are using every day, or a format they're using every day, to engage with one another in the real world as well? So I'm particularly interested in where that can take us in the very near future.
And of course, all these involve a new skill set for practitioners. So, and we know that we've heard a lot about the death of L&D, and that unless we start to change and more we won't be around much longer. In your view, JD, what are some of the key skills that we need to acquire or start to develop to become more effective and efficient in our organisations?
Gotcha. I think one, we need to balance our desire to build and create with our ability to connect with both people to content and people to one another. So I think L&D needs to be kind of play that role of key enabler in the organization and connector. So maybe it's not about us having to make something or come up with a strategy, but more effectively connect people to one another or to existing resources to drive and enable their own personal learning and performance support. Two, I think we need to step away from being a support team and referring to our internal partners as the business or as clients, and really, we often ask for a seat at the table, but then we position ourselves in a different room from where the table is. So step into and enable ourselves and understand the business so that we can become part of that conversation and part of the operation, and not something that's called upon when necessary. Because we know that in order to enable performance and for learning to be successful, it's an everyday activity. Learning is our default status as human beings. So how do we step into that and leverage that as part of the operation rather than a support team that then is refers to the business as some third-party entity, like we're not part of that conversation.
Well, thank you, JD. Thank you for your time today. Wish you every success in your role with Axonify. Just want to briefly tell us what you do at Axonify so people get a better understanding of who you are and what you actually do there?
Sure. So I'm a principal learning strategist with Axonify. So Axonify, we provide an approach and a platform that really enables employee knowledge in a variety of different ways. So everything from searchable performance support and knowledge repository to micro learning to reinforcement to behavior assessment. So really kind of taking a 360 holistic look at employee knowledge and how to enable that in various ways. So in my role, I kind of consult internally with the different parts of the organization to enable strategies based on my knowledge of the industry and my practical experience as an L&D practitioner. And then I work with both prospective and existing customers to really not only enable and strengthen the use of Axonify within their learning ecosystems, but to really take, again, a holistic view at their learning ecosystems and say, how can we strengthen everything you're doing to enable performance with Axonify as a cornerstone of that opportunity for employees.
Well, thank you. Good luck with Axonify. We wish you every success, and thank you for speaking to us today.
My pleasure.